This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jespersen.
I want to welcome you to this episode of the show. Max Fawcett joining us today. We're going to talk about, we're going to talk about a million things with Max. The future of pipelines, bold plans in Alberta. Alberta's Premier says Alberta's going to double production. Max, former editor, as you know, of Alberta Oil magazine, now the lead columnist at Canada's National Observer. Obviously, with a solid background, good understanding on the dynamic across the country, getting pipelines built, what stood in the way of pipelines getting built before, and want to talk about that. I haven't even picked Johnny Infamous's brain on Elon Musk's new political party, the America Party. Folks have long seen the United States because, for the most part, this has been the reality as a two-party system, but could a third party with the right leadership, or at least compelling leadership with a lot of money behind it. That's certainly not going to be an issue in this case. Musk famously donating about $300 million to Donald Trump's campaign to become president, and obviously that bromance collapsed. It imploded, or maybe it exploded. I think when something goes as sort of bomb-esque as that friendship did, that short-term collaboration between the president of the United States and the richest man on planet Earth, maybe it's more of an explosion than an implosion. But the fact of the matter is, they're not buddies anymore. They're not working together anymore. Elon, as you know, is no longer steering this DOGE, this Department of Government Efficiency, and the president, for what it's worth, upon announcement of Elon Musk's plan, has called this new political party ridiculous. Now, when you think back through American politics and you think of third parties that have resonated, there really hasn't been one. If I look back, and I'm trying to think, I'm getting back into like the teenage years, at the very early stages of paying attention to politics, I remember Ross Perot, who had enough bankroll, obviously. I think the Texas Oilman, wasn't he? Wasn't that his background from the state of Texas? Did everything, probably overshot the expectations and represented himself in the debates and gave the American people a third option. But was he ever really a serious contender for president? Obviously not a contender to have representation in the Senate or the House. So could this be different? I just kind of feel like with the Elon Musk thing that there are other factors at play. Like, this is a guy that has a legion of enormous fans. He obviously infused not just a ton of funding, but a ton of momentum and a ton of enthusiasm into the Trump campaign. So to see all of this go sideways, people are obviously going to have questions. Number one, what's the motivation here? Number two, why exactly did everything go wrong between Musk and Trump? And of course, the obvious one, if Musk knew that Trump was as bad as he's saying he is now, then why did he shoot him like $350 million in the first place? I have questions about this America Party.
Sure, yeah.
I've been curious to see where it goes. Trump says, quote, speaking to reporters, this is just a couple of days ago before he boarded Air Force One, I think it's ridiculous to start a third party. It says America's always been a two-party system, and I think starting a third party just adds to the confusion. So this after Musk had posted on X, his social media platform, over the weekend, that he had set up the America Party to challenge what he's calling the Uniparty. He's basically saying that the Republicans and the Democrats are in bed together. He's repeatedly criticized government policies that increase the U.S. national debt. And of course, as we briefly spoke about on our 4th of July episode, Trump's big, beautiful bill is sending shockwaves, not just through the American economy, but the American population as well. And Elon Musk is sort of clapping back on that. He says, the new party at some point could back a presidential candidate. Musk says the next 12 months or so, they're going to be focusing on the House and the Senate. So this is something where, he's coming across as quite ambitious, coming across like he's not messing around about this. This isn't sort of trolling like Elon does on his social media, floating ideas, throwing them out there, seeing what sticks to the wall. It sounds like he's being serious about starting a new party. The president, Donald Trump, for what it's worth, on his social media platform. Get used to, I guess, 2025 and moving forward, where now every major player, it seems, everybody that's worth over $1 billion and getting involved in politics has their own social media platforms. You have messages going back and forth between X and Truth Social. Truth, obviously the Trump platform. He says, I am saddened. Trump says, I'm saddened to watch Elon Musk go completely off the rails, essentially becoming a train wreck over the past 5 weeks. Trump's post then took aim at Musk's push for this EV mandate, an electric vehicle mandate, saying that it would have forced everyone to buy an electric car in a short period of time. Whether or not that's true remains to be seen. We're going to ask Max about this. The president's tax and spending plan, this big, beautiful bill, which he signed into law on American Independence Day. That was the big to-do that the president was throwing at the White House. You probably saw him surrounded by Republican lawmakers in the who's who, signing in his big, beautiful bill, ended tax breaks for EVs. So a shot across the bow, or maybe even more than that, maybe a torpedo aimed at Elon Musk. Said that Musk's proposal for an EV mandate, the president had opposed from the beginning, explaining the reasons for omitting the vehicles in that legislation. He says people are now allowed to buy whatever they want, gas-powered hybrids or new technologies as they come about. There will be no more EV mandate. That from Trump. So they're throwing barbs, they're throwing bombs back and forth. It wasn't that long ago that Donald Trump was on the grounds of the White House at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue in that red Tesla. Do you remember that? He was pretty excited about that. Yeah, it was like using, obviously the office of the presidency to promote Tesla, to promote EVs. So this is quite an about face, but this is a story that we're keeping an eye on. And another one that we want to make sure is on your radar, a developing news story as we're recording this episode, as we're talking to you, this reporting by Colin Freeze in the Globe and Mail, Canadian Armed Forces members are among 4 individuals charged, say the RCMP, in a Quebec extremist plot. And the more you hear about this story, this may be the first you're hearing of it right here on Real Talk. It's probably going to send shivers down your spine, or at least get you close to there. The RCMP in Quebec has basically dropped a bombshell here. 4 people, including active members of the Canadian Armed Forces, arrested on allegations tied to what the cops are calling a terrorist extremist militia plot. And these are always the kind of stories where you go, whoa, these are the types of things that are happening around us that most people are not aware of. But these guys, allegedly, these 4 individuals that are charged, wanted to forcibly seize land near Quebec City. So think about that for a second. They want to forcibly seize land near Quebec City. This isn't like fringe internet chatter or, weekend warrior cosplay. We're talking about trained soldiers, according to police, preparing to take up arms against their own country, plotting to carve out their own independent territory. As part of the story, again, reported by Colin Freeze, the Mounties say that this started with raids back in January of last year, in 2024, where they found 16 explosive devices, more than 80 firearms, more than 11,000 rounds of ammunition, tactical gear, and some of it, this may be obvious as people start to connect the dots here. Again, these are just charges laid. These men have not been convicted, but police say that some of the tactical gear and the other equipment that they seized was actually diverted from the military itself, from the Canadian Forces. Wow. So they'd been surveilling these guys for over a year. By the way, on a side note, these are the types of stories when I'm grateful that we have people working the non-glamorous, behind the scenes, in the shadows jobs on surveillance. You know what I mean? As the general public's just going about its business, not realizing this is happening. So this morning, as we talk to you, after what they're calling an extremely complex terrorism investigation, police finally moved in. So, it might be obvious, but when you start to look at this, and I'm reading this as I wake up this morning, you're going, well, why is this such a big deal? Number one, this isn't supposed to happen here, right? We like to think of Canada, and maybe we should check ourselves. We've seen other instances where these types of things can brew, where these can germinate and grow, oftentimes outside of the watchful eyes of police until it's too late, especially with individual actors. But this, as a group of 4, at least just the 4 people charged, we think that we're more insulated than maybe the United States as an example, but the uncomfortable truth in all of that is we most definitely are not. We've seen a steady rise of ideologically motivated violent extremism in Canada, whether it's anti-government, anti-authority. I think of the border blockade at Coots not too long ago, right here in Alberta, in our home province. extremism on the far right or otherwise. And the RCMP, as you can read in the piece, is if you check it out yourself, if you're a subscriber, which we encourage you to be at the Globe and Mail, we encourage you to support investigative journalism wherever you can. I think a story like this reiterates the importance of that as well. You realize that the RCMP cagey on specifics right now, which is oftentimes the case before something like this goes in front of the courts, but they say that the group had like a kind of a vague cocktail of grievances, anti-government, anti-authority, and basically wanting to break away and form their own state using their own methods. So these aren't just keyboard commandos. And I think that that's kind of one of the things that's really jumping out at me here. The Mounties say that they were doing military-style training. They were doing shooting drills. They were doing ambush drills, survival exercises, even reconnaissance missions. Not just talking tough online, right? These guys were getting ready. So that's why this matters most off. Because when you've got trained soldiers that are, allegedly plotting against the country that they've sworn to defend, by the way, that they're being paid to train to defend, and that hits at the very heart of national security, right? It's also definitely, I think, a gut punch to the thousands of proud, loyal members of our armed forces who are serving with integrity. This stains the uniform, and those men and women definitely know it. It also raises really tough questions, and we've talked about this on the show before, about extremist infiltration of the military, right? Like, how did these guys get in? Or if this was not on their radar, if this was not how they were wired when they joined the military and when they went through whatever screening is involved in that, then how are they reached or how are they influenced after that? Were there warning signs that were missed? Was there maybe a whistleblower that put this on the RCMP's radar? Are there more like them? Not just in Quebec, but across the country. We've heard from experts over the years, including here on this show, that have warned that Canada's basically not taking the threat of radicalization inside the military seriously enough. And this definitely qualifies as a wake-up call. So as this story unfolds, and again, we know just basic details, we wanted to make sure that we put this on your radar this morning. But I would say, number one, stay engaged, right? Like, follow the court case. This is one that we'll obviously keep an eye on. And these are sometimes the cases that can extend not just over months, but even in years. But pay attention as the evidence comes out and as the evidence is presented. This is not about tarring everybody who's skeptical about government as a terrorist. And that's certainly not the case, right? But this is about recognizing that there's a dangerous line that gets crossed when grievance turns into violence, or at least plans for violence, when talk becomes training and when planning becomes stockpiling. And it's also, I guess, about demanding accountability, which is probably what a lot of people are going to be thinking about as you hear about this story. Like, from the military, for example, to tighten screening. And it'll be interesting to glean insights here as part of court testimony on exactly when and how these individuals were radicalized. But from the RCMP to Canada's spy agency to CSIS, to keep disrupting these plots. And from our leaders, I guess, as well, our political leaders. And we'll expect a statement from the Prime Minister at some point. And I would imagine that Pierre Poilievre will want to get in front of a microphone to talk about this as well. But for leaders to be honest with Canadians, public safety ministers and otherwise, about the very real risks that we face. Because the reality is, and again, as I'm just staring at this headline, I use the word chills on purpose, because just Canadian Armed Forces members among 4 charged in extremist plot. Extremism, I think, whether it's fueled by far-right conspiracies or anti-government rage or some, stew of both, isn't just an American problem. It's not just a problem elsewhere on planet Earth. It's here in Canada, and it's real, and it's something that we're going to have to face head on. And I think that this serves as a serious reminder. I was also just thinking, people often talk about, and you can't talk about any profession or any career and say everybody in this career is like this, or this is what draws everybody into this sort of career. Mm-hmm. But you oftentimes hear of these outliers, whether it's military, law enforcement, members of a police service or what have you, that are joining, not to quote Jesse Palmer on The Bachelor, but they're not joining for the right reasons, right? And you hear these stories of individuals that either abuse the office or resort to, extreme or violent tactics while wearing these uniforms, participate in these types of militia groups, militia activities, extremist groups online or in real life, either in or out of uniform. And it's like not the most difficult thing in the world to believe, right? Like you think of somebody that's plotting to commandeer territory, to create their own independent state with, thousands of rounds of ammunition, which obviously, I'm thinking of like Waco, Texas, not exactly apples and apples, but at the same time, like how often do these things go well, right? This is not going to go well. And then you start to think of the types of involvements that people like this, people that allegedly are making these types of plans would be drawn to. And the military is like an obvious one, right? You want to learn how to defend yourself in hand-to-hand combat. You want to learn how to snipe. You want to learn how to, load and clean and utilize weapons. You want to understand tactical realities and strategies. I'm not trying to play fear factor here. But as Canadians look at a story like this, you kind of wonder, and again, with apologies to members of the Canadian forces and members of the military, these are outliers to be sure. But at the same time, you kind of wonder if the average person's not going to be wondering today, how many more of these folks are there? Are there more of these folks? You know what I mean? That type of a thing. It's a wild story. You can send us your thoughts to talk@ryanjespersen.com on this. Again, this is a story that will continue to follow. Wise Kyle in the chat obviously says innocent before proven guilty. For sure. Everybody deserves their day in court. Vamp Fashion says before we panic about our military, and again, I'm not panicking. But at the same time, I think I'm applying an appropriate level of interest to the story because it's a big deal. Canadian Forces members are removing or stealing equipment that belongs to the military that's designed to protect people in combat with the goal of committing illegal acts to secure a sovereign territory within Canadian borders. Like, that is what it is. All right, but Vamp goes on to make some other important points, I think, which are worth considering. Says, is this group like a Quebec separatist group? Is it aligned with Indigenous land issues? Is it a new separatist group, or is it just a bunch of guys aspiring to get out? All of these questions, I suppose, that we'll seek and ultimately hope to understand answers to. Emily says, I just think it's unrealistic to think that there aren't any more. White Dream says Northern Idaho is just like this. You do hear about regions in different countries. And again, I'm trying to really, be like normal. It's real talk, right? Someone approaches type of a story, how the average person would approach it. But when you start saying like, I've heard about a lot of this in Northern Idaho or Montana, you hear about the Montana militias. Everybody's been hearing about those for years. We understand that there are people in Alberta that rallied, like I said, the Coots border. You remember the border blockade that lasted weeks and ended up in some pretty serious charges. And that's been a debacle ever since, by the way. But we recognize that there are folks out there whose disdain for the government, their dissatisfaction with the way that society's functioning, doesn't stop with leaving a couple heated messages on politicians' Instagram posts and then getting involved in their local constituency association. Do you know what I mean? Some people are going to go quite a bit further, or at least endeavor to get quite a bit further until police step in. Tony's wondering, is this indicative of leadership rot in the Canadian Armed Forces? Says, you can't tell me that Armed Forces leadership wasn't aware of this. Alberta Girl says our veterans are coming home to homelessness, PTSD, and a Veterans Affairs Department that has advised them, in some circumstances, to seek medical assistance in dying as opposed to help them. It says this can result in many cases in anger and even death by suicide. And Alberta Girl is 100% correct in that. Others of you, Auntie Danny says, Jesper, you got to think about weapons confiscated during that Coots. Everybody's mentioning Coots because it's such an obvious, it wasn't that long ago, and there's a lot of similar storylines here. Minus, if memory serves, an involvement by Canadian forces. But Auntie Danny says right-wing extremists now come in the form of, former lobbyists, you know? Some of you are referencing Alberta's premier in this. You say it's here, and this new Alberta police force, says Danny, is ice light. Jillian says, you never hear these guys say innocent until proven guilty when accused terrorists are brown. Jillian also making a very fair point. You know, less an interesting point here says when he drove for Atlas van lines for the mover, says I moved all kinds of radicals in the military. He goes on to say even moved an RCMP member with crack pipes. What? Was it like the box was just open? It was like in an open bag? Interesting. Kenzie says when Canadians have been led to believe that the lads and Coots were the reason that the Emergencies Act was used, we've got to be very skeptical about reports like this. Kind of an interesting point. You know, I mean, I would say this is that, well, the RCMP doesn't bat 1,000 with Crown prosecutors securing convictions for every charge that's ever laid. This is more than just a report, right? Like the charges have been laid by RCMP relating to a plot to take over land in Quebec City. This is Marc Aurel Chabot, 24 years old. Simone Angaraudet, 24 years old. Raphael Lagasse, 25 years old. And Matthew Forbes, 33 years old. The first three I mentioned, RCMP alleged they took concrete actions to facilitate terrorist activity. A statement by police issued just a couple of hours before we're talking to you. The three accused were planning to create an anti-government militia. To achieve this, they took part in military-style training, shooting, ambush, survival, and navigation exercises. They also conducted a scouting operation. So this is something that was either very real or was on its way to becoming very real. And again, as mentioned, none of these allegations have been tested in court. Is Max ready to rock right now? I want to roll in hot with this one, and I'm assuming he's seen this story. In our feature interview today, presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West, we welcome back to the show the lead columnist for Canada's National Observer, Max Fawcett. Max, I don't know if you saw this breaking news story. These Canadian Forces members among the four that are charged in a Quebec extremist plot. First glance, first instinct, first reaction, how does it land with you?
It's not surprising. It's troubling. It is, I think, an inevitable result of the kind of rhetoric that we hear. And, you know, it comes mostly from conservative politicians. I hate to break it, but, you know, it's just around the role of government, the failures of government. You know, Canada is broken. Ottawa is attacking our resources. There is a real looseness that some politicians have with talking about government and using it as a very convenient scapegoat, whether it's for, you know, their own political failures or you know, an opportunity to whip up anger and frustration with their political opponents. And it has consequences that go beyond the ballot box. And this is one of them. If you are constantly telling people that the government is failing, the government is bad, the government is actually your enemy, sometimes people will take these sorts of extreme measures. You know, these men, boys, they sound like they're far too online and probably far too heavily embedded in the, you know, the Joe Rogan right-wing kind of ecosystem where you know, this sort of stuff is just the food of the land. But this is what happens is when, you know, when people are online too much and they find people who are equally online too much, they whip themselves up, they convince themselves of a bad idea, and they get close to executing it. And thank goodness the RCMP intercepted this and made sure it didn't actually come to pass.
Yeah, no kidding. So let me ask you this. What do you think is an appropriate, like at this point, you know, obviously, again, charges laid, not convictions. At this point, what's the appropriate move or what's the appropriate messaging from the Prime Minister or Minister of Public Safety? But I'd like to see the Prime Minister speak to this. And what would be the appropriate statement? And I'm not going to say from interim or acting leader Andrew Scheer. What would you like to see Pierre Poilievre say about this?
I'd like all of them to call out this sort of, you know, online hate, no matter where it's directed. And just try to lower the temperature on all of our political conversations. You know, I think we're seeing in the United States what happens when you constantly put politics to the boil. Is things just that you lose control of a reasonable political discourse. And so I think we can have strong disagreements about our political differences without having to create these enemies, these boogeymen, without having to malign government, without having to tell people that the society that they live in is broken or collapsing, because some people take that very seriously, and they will do things that none of us, I hope, want to see happen.
Yeah, no kidding. We opened the show just with a couple of comments, and we're looking forward to connecting with you on this. Elon Musk launching this America First party. Donald Trump immediately clapping back for obvious reasons. I think, it's safe to say, I'm not pretending like I'm in the Oval Office. I'm not pretending like I know either of these guys personally, but it's safe to say that what was an enthusiastic collaboration, I'm sure for self-serving purposes, nobody's fooling themselves about that, but it was a pretty enthusiastic and fast friendship, a very public friendship, right? Elon Musk like wielding the chainsaw and jumping up and down on the campaign trail and donating hundreds of millions of dollars to Donald Trump. Donald Trump, as Johnny and I were talking about, standing in front of it, sort of going Vanna White on the red Tesla in front of the White House, best buddies forever. Into an absolute meltdown. Now, obviously, animosity, and I think it's quite obvious that Elon Musk intends to oppose Donald Trump and oppose everything that Donald Trump's trying to do at every possible opportunity. Trump says America is a two-party system. This is a ridiculous plan. Musk says they may put a presidential candidate forward in the future, but they're focusing now on the House and Senate, which was kind of the opposite of like a Ross Perot 30 years ago. What do you make of the story? The America First Party with the richest man on earth leading it.
I mean, it's so America. It's the messiest political breakup in the history of political breakups. They got together in very sort of dramatic fashion, and now they're breaking up in dramatic fashion. And I sort of wonder what Musk thought he was getting himself into. Trump has never been enthusiastic about electric vehicles, about climate change, about all the things that Musk used to care about. He's never been particularly concerned about things like the deficit or the debt. The national debt went up enormously under Trump because of his tax cut for rich people like Elon Musk. So if that was his signal issue, if fiscal propriety of balancing the budget was his sort of litmus test, I don't know what he thought he was going to get out of Donald Trump. But this fallout, creating this political party, America has a graveyard full of moderate, middle of the road third party attempts that have gone absolutely nowhere. They tried that recently with Joe Manchin and the No Labels project. They were looking at possibly getting him on the ballot, and they wasted millions of dollars, and that went nowhere. I don't think that a non-Republican, non-Democrat has been elected to Congress since 1970. So sure, like Elon could throw lots of money at a few races and split the vote enough to maybe help elect a couple of Democrats, although I don't know why he would want that. He hates the Democrats too. It just feels like he's kind of having a temper tantrum in public right now and doesn't really have a strategy here. I mean, he can't run for president. He's not an American citizen. So he can't really do the Ross Perot thing. Maybe he can find somebody who is charismatic, but I don't see him throwing a lot of his money behind someone else. Is he going to get Peter Thiel to run for president? So it just feels like he's kind of working this out in public, and he's real mad, and he's trying to lash out and do damage to Trump because Trump acted exactly the way everyone who's paid any attention to this knew Trump would act. Elon played himself. It's that meme, congratulations, you played yourself.
Yeah. I was just saying like, it's an obvious observation, but I think it's worth saying, when someone like Elon Musk or anybody else, enthusiastically supports a candidate for elected office, donates their time, contributes their influence, and there's enormous influence on behalf of Elon Musk, make no mistake. Like, I think this could actually be very interesting. You're getting two like egomaniacs with like rabid followings, like two of them. They get into a pissing contest. People might be interested to see. I mean, maybe Trump's got a bit of a head start, but like Elon Musk brings a lot to the table here. When you have somebody who contributes that sort of influence, that sort of power, that sort of funding, they're lending their, you invoke the word credibility, but they're essentially endorsing this candidate, and then weeks or months later saying this guy's always been problematic. I've known that this guy's a huge issue. Starts, talking about like Trump being on the Epstein list and I mean, like really digging deep, like trying to hit him where it really hurts. The obvious first question to ask is, if you knew all this, why the hell were you supporting him in the first place? I don't know, I keep sort of hesitating to use the word credibility, which is probably a commentary on this conversation in the first place. I don't know if this hurts Elon Musk's credibility in the political space, or if his followers will even care. I mean, people have short memories.
I mean, he doesn't have much credibility to begin with in the political space. He used to be quite popular before he got involved in politics. There's this book that Rick Wilson, a former, sort of Republican operative turned never Trumper, wrote, called "Everything Trump Touches Dies." And that's what's happened to Elon Musk's reputation. He used to be very popular among Democrats, not so much among Republicans. He is beyond toxic now among Democrats in the United States. They simply will not buy his products. They revile him, and with good reason. The cuts that he did under Doge to USAID is going to kill many thousands of people in the developing world, children. That's on him. And even now Republicans hate him because he's going after Trump. He's going after Big Daddy. And so he's kind of managed to alienate both sides of the American political spectrum. Any political party that is run by him or nominally sort of figureheaded by him, it may have some support in pockets of the internet, but in the real world, forget about it. He couldn't even use his money and influence to carry, I believe, like a Wisconsin state judicial election. How on earth does he think that he's going to move the needle on a national election when he's hated by Democrats and Republicans?
Yeah, and here's where I think it gets particularly interesting is Trump has the power, obviously has more power than anybody else on planet Earth, to do his best to bury Elon's moneymaker. Like at this point, right? Like Tesla's the company, the holding of Elon's, that I think that the board and shareholders and by the way, people that have like spent $150,000 on a Tesla and would love for it to not become a hot button political symbol. I think I have many friends who drive Teslas, and I think of them every single day. The last 6 months have been somewhat tumultuous, I would imagine, as a Tesla driver, unless you just kind of block it all out. But this, the Trump taking aim at Musk's push for this EV mandate, I'm presenting it as though it would have forced everybody to buy an electric car in a short period of time. Obviously, omitting that, ending tax breaks for electric vehicles in this big, beautiful bill was a big step. And I think if there wasn't a declaration of war before aimed at Elon Musk, that was it. I can't help but note an interesting line that crosses north of the border into Canada. And you wrote about this on American Independence Day. If you're just joining us in this feature interview presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West, we're talking to Max Fawcett, lead columnist at Canada's National Observer. You can check it out, nationalobserver.com. The conservative war on EVs is bound to fail. So electric vehicles, not a political symbol, typically have become exactly that. And you write about an email that was sent to supporters a short time ago, last month, by Conservative co-deputy leader Melissa Landsman, who said, quote, "The radical liberals are coming to make your gas-powered vehicles illegal." Said this radical government will force you to buy an expensive electric vehicle. Were there political strategists in North America that all of a sudden saw EVs and realized that there's more political capital in attacking this technology than in anything else?
Maybe. I think a lot of it is that Trump just doesn't trust and like things that don't come from the 1980s. His brain basically calcified in the 80s and 90s. And so he thinks about the world from that perspective. It's why he's obsessed with tariffs. It's why he's obsessed with Japan, because, of course, Japan was the most powerful non-American economy back then. And it's why he thinks electric vehicles are garbage and junk. And I think the the conservative movement in Canada, whether it likes it or not, some parts do like it, some don't. They are wedded to the hip to Trumpism. They are following in the winds that Trump is putting out on a bunch of different issues. And so when Trump decided that EVs were bad, I think the conservatives were happy to follow along. It's also just a continuation of Poilievre's strategy of just attacking any part of the Liberal climate plan under Justin Trudeau, and obviously the EV mandate was a part of that. But it's very cringe, I think, to talk about it in this way. Number one, no, your gas-powered vehicle will never be illegal. You could keep it running on the road for 30 years. You could still buy one in 2034 if the current regulations hold. The point here is that the global automotive sector is going in this direction, and the North American car companies are dangerously far behind the Chinese ones. If we want to have a viable auto sector that supports jobs, supports investment, supports tax flows, we need to be in the game here. And I'll read you a quote from the CEO of Ford, Jim Farley, because he had one of the Chinese EVs sent to him so he could test it out. He said, "It's the most humbling thing I have ever seen. They have far superior in-vehicle technology. Beyond that, their cost, the quality of their vehicles is far superior to what I see in the West." That's not me saying that. That's not some, Greenpeace environmentalist. That's the CEO of Ford. So I think the conservatives have to, as we get tired of hearing in Alberta, skate to where the puck is going.
Yeah.
Because on this one, electric vehicles are going to be the thing. They, by the time we get to 2035, they will be cheaper, not just to operate, but to buy up front than gasoline-powered vehicles. This is just like a rearguard culture war. It's a way of making the people who don't think climate change is worth worrying about happy, but it's not going to help them win an election. It's not going to help them look more moderate. It's not going to help them look more prime ministerial. It makes them look exactly like they looked in the last election, which is why they lost it.
Yeah, Tommy Temper's watching us on the Real Talk live stream presented by California Closets. He says there's nothing wrong with electric vehicles, just don't force them on everybody. Says that is wrong. Everybody's, by the way, sharing what they drive in the chat, which is great. Jill says she's driving an F-150. Says, but it has an EcoBoost engine, so that's not too bad. Erica says the vehicles of the future are moving toward hydrogen now. I'm not so sure about that, although it's been interesting to see a few on the road. Max, you're shaking your head. I was the Edmonton International Airport has these, and I don't have the facts, so I don't want to get into telling the whole story because I'll probably be wrong, but there are some hydrogen implications at EIA, and I know that their big, bold economic plan for the future involves tapping into hydrogen in some way, shape, or form. But I think to get this message across, and I'm just saying what I've noticed at golf tournaments and around town lately, EIA, the International Airport in the capital city, has a fleet of hydrogen-powered vehicles. And so I asked Myron Keene, the CEO, he was driving one. I was at the Nisku Energy Show hosting it maybe a month or so ago, and I said, "Tell me about this thing." Like, what? He was more than happy to talk about it. There's people gathering all around. It looks like a normal car. Like nobody's ever really seen one before. I'm like, how do you fill it up? Like, you just like dump water in it? Like I have no idea how these even work. And he was talking to me how it's really interesting, fascinating technology. He wasn't 100% certain that everybody would be driving hydrogen vehicles within the next 10 years. But we've also got some people, Kyle, in our chat saying. He's saying some European and North American auto manufacturers are actually dialing back their EV programs. I've read that and I've heard that as well, that sales they're not as bullish on the demand for EVs in North America. And then, of course, we also have to factor in to this mishmash. I mean, there's 100 factors at play. The fact that Chinese EVs are tariffed so heavily that it's almost an impossibility for people to see them here, although I will note the CEO of Ford is driving one, by the way, which is also kind of interesting. So like there's a lot of factors at play when it comes to commerce. How long can Canada continue to apply those tariffs? The United States as well. How long does that make sense? The power, the economic power that China has. What do reciprocal tariffs look like? The future of EVs, to me, seems a little murky still. I'm one of the skeptics, Max.
All right. I mean, to me, looking at the data, it's a question of when, not if. And I think there's definitely some near-term choppiness in the adoption rates in North America, not in China, not in the developing world, not even in Europe for the most part. They are full steam ahead there. But yeah, because we have politicians in North America who want to continue to prop up the status quo, they are gumming up the works and having some success with it. I mean, hydrogen is a science experiment, right? Like it is not going to be the passenger vehicle fuel of the future. It is sort of like the equivalent of you remember that movie Clueless?
Yeah.
It's fetch. Quit trying to make fetch happen. It's not going to happen. Alberta is trying to do it because it allows them to continue incorporating fossil fuels into the ecosystem there. There are industrial applications for hydrogen, absolutely, because of the energy density. But in terms of the average vehicle that we use to get to work, no, hydrogen is not going to be a thing. And the longer that we persist with that, I think the sillier Alberta is going to start to look on this front. There is definitely some near-term hurdles in terms of getting to full electrification. I understand people saying they don't want to be forced to buy one. I think that's why we're going to see a lot more flexibility on hybrids. And you are seeing some automakers go more towards hybrids than full EVs. It's certainly the view of Toyota. I think it's the view of Honda. I'm fine with hybrids. I think hybrids are great. They're the best of both worlds. But the days of the purely gasoline-powered vehicle are numbered. It's just a matter of when.
Max, David T. has just earned 2 points on the Real Talk scoreboard for accurately pointing out that fetch is from Mean Girls, not Clueless.
Mean Girls.
Yeah,
all right.
That's okay. I quite honestly had no idea what you were talking about regardless. So, David, You put it on my radar. David focused us on the facts. This audience fact-checking in real time. The best damn talk show audience in the country. As we hang out with Max Fawcett, we're going to pop out for one quick second here, Max, and then I got to ask you about this. There's a John Iveson column. I'm sure you've read it, his Substack on Pierre Poilievre and pancake breakfasts and maybe a troubling trend for Canada's Conservatives there. I want to pick your brain. I have to get your take on F-bombs deployed in Edmonton City Council chambers, and I know you're going to give us the inside scoop on a not yet published column coming up on the future of pipelines and Danielle Smith's big plan for Alberta. More with Max Fawcett in a quick second. First, I want to remind you, when we talk about this Real Talk live chat, it is powered by our friends at Park Power. That's your friendly local utilities provider, and they're in the business of internet, electricity, and natural gas. You can go to parkpower.ca to learn more about what they do, or go to parkpower.ca/realtalk for exclusive promo codes that could save you up to $150 off your very first bill. That's parkpower.ca/realtalk. If you're not getting your internet, electricity, and natural gas from Park Power, you're paying too much. You can sign up for electricity only. You can bundle your services. And, of course, with the promo codes that you'll find on their website, you can save up to $150 on your very first bill. Plus, they've got the lowest fixed electricity rate in the province. That's parkpower.ca/realtalk. Of course, everybody's talking about the Calgary Stampede right now. Our friends at the Edmonton Chamber of Commerce have been down there, down in Cowtown, representing Edmonton's business community, talking to the movers and shakers. I've encouraged you to follow them on Instagram before, at Edmonton Chamber. You can do exactly that and check out exactly what they've been doing. Edmonton means business, they say. Max, check this out. From hydrogen leadership to post-secondary excellence, from a booming visitor economy to thousands of nonprofits, the Edmonton region, built on collaboration, innovation, and determination. There is no louder cheer team than the team at the Edmonton Chamber of Commerce. Learn more about the benefits of membership by visiting their website. That's edmontonchamber.com. If you're looking for work this summer, if you're looking to shake up your career path, maybe look toward an area of opportunity as opposed to maybe a dwindling industry, if that's where you find yourself working now, the team at Solar by Kuby would love to talk to you. If you go to kuby.ca, that's KUBY.ca, check out the Solar link. You can see the careers posted there in real time. As the jobs go up, they hit the website. As the positions are filled, then they take them down. So you know that everything you're looking at is current, including postings right now for solar PV experts in Edmonton, a sales expert in Kamloops, a sales expert in Kelowna. How great would that be? Experts in Calgary and Lethbridge, and even more across the province. No solar installer is growing faster than the team at Kuby, who just celebrated 10 years in business. proud presenters of Positive Reflections. First episode of every week here on Real Talk, it's Solar by Kubi. And we want to make sure that North Road Investment Council is on your radar. This is a team, a steady hand, a studied voice that's been working with discerning families for years now. Marshall Carey and the team recognizing that this time of year, summer, is a time when many successful Canadians are pausing and reflecting on the career and retirement goals. And at North Road Investment Council, they're working with Canadians who've done exactly that. You've built a successful career. You now want to ensure that your wealth is being organized to deliver a successful retirement. Now, the typical client has around $2 million in investable assets and is approaching their investing from an analytical, detail-driven profession. Maybe an engineer, an architect, a dentist. If that sounds like you, the team at North Road would love to talk to you. You can check out their website to learn more about how they operate. That's northroadic.com. Start the conversation today. Built on clarity, discipline, and true alignment. Max Fawcett, our guest, in our feature interview presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West. Max, this John Iveson piece caught my attention for sure, writing about Pierre Poilievre, and we'll get to that in just a quick second, but basically saying that there's some concerning things happening if you're a Poilievre supporter paying attention to Stampede. It's not going the way the Conservatives would want. You don't hear that very often. For Conservatives, the Stampede is fish in a barrel. The Stampede grounds, the parties are packed, typically with Conservative supporters, with oil and gas workers, with people that celebrate Western Canada and everything that comes with it. So what's going wrong for the leader of the Conservatives as he waits, by the way, for that by-election coming up in Battle River Crowfoot?
Well, I mean, he's the same guy that he was last year, right? And John Iveson in that column, sort of writes about how last year he played the conquering hero, basically, awaiting his inevitable victory. And he has not learned, apparently, any lessons from the election he just lost. And I mean, that's confirmed. He's done some interviews recently with Conservatives where he kind of talked about how, everything they did was perfect. The campaign was just flawless. And the only problem was Trump. There's nothing they did wrong. Like he gave a speech, or gave a speech is a kind way of putting it, but just talking to Conservative supporters, and he was making fun of Mark Carney flipping pancakes and talking about, the problem is he doesn't have his elbows up or down, and he's just being the same prickish guy.
That is kind of funny, though, isn't it?
Well, I mean, look, I think the fair point there, and it was one that someone else made on a show I was on the other day, is like, look, when you're new to flipping pancakes, look, you got to remember the first one's always the test pancake,
yes. Right?
And Carney didn't he didn't do the test pancake, but he had he was good humored about it. He laughed about it. He made fun of himself about it. Even the premier was good natured about it. But Poilievre cannot help himself. He has to be that guy, and I just don't think that's what Canadians want right now. He is a political machine built to defeat one person, and that one person is no longer in politics. And now he is having to campaign against somebody who is governing like a progressive Conservative, who is doing some fairly conservative things in terms of policy, and just has the look of someone who is dead serious about the economy. It's such a striking contrast to Justin Trudeau. And Poilievre has not changed his approach one iota. And I think Conservatives are, they look at the polls, they look at, there was a new one that came out from Research Co. that had Carney, 24 points ahead in terms of preferred prime minister on U.S.-Canada relations, foreign relations, but it had Carney ahead on oil and gas. It had Carney ahead on crime. It had Carney ahead on immigration. So if Carney's ahead of Poilievre on Poilievre's strongest issues, what exactly is he bringing to the table other than the ability to chew apples?
Yeah, this we're going to be talking to Bonnie Critchley tomorrow, and obviously, I'll put it on the record. I think it goes without saying we've invited Pierre Poilievre to come on the show as well. The door is wide open. No offense, Max, but we'll cancel any interview to get Pierre Poilievre on the show, assuming it's not Mark Carney. This by-election is widely expected to go strongly in Pierre Poilievre's favor. the incumbent that stepped down there, more than 80% of the vote, which is like a walloping in any election. But we're going to pick Bonnie Critchley's brain. I'm curious to know, she's a veteran. Served in the Canadian Forces. She's a rancher. She walks the walk. All of her videos, I'm not sure if you've seen it, but she's like on horseback and like mending fences and tossing bales, and like she's the real deal. But respectfully, and we'll obviously pick her brain tomorrow and give her a chance to say what she has to say. But it's an uphill climb, to say the least. I don't think that Pierre Poilievre is at any risk, and I want to respect the voters in that constituency, and obviously they can rally, and maybe crazier things have happened, although that would be one of the craziest all-time upsets in Canadian history. But Poilievre's not at risk of losing that by-election, I don't think. But do you actually think that he could be at risk of seeing his tenure as Conservative leader end before the next federal election?
Yeah, absolutely.
Really?
And I don't think that, you're right. I think the odds of Bonnie Critchley actually beating him are
very slim,
very low, very slow. I think the odds of her ending his political career are much higher.
Really?
Because if let's just say he gets 55% of the vote or 60% of the vote, people are going to point out that is 20% less than a backbench MP who had to step aside for him. If he can't do better than Damien Carrick in that riding, he is a loser. And that will be the frame that a lot of Conservatives look at it through. So if Bonnie Critchley can, get a campaign where she gets 25% of the vote, that's ball game for Poilievre, I think. The rumor, it's not going to happen right away, but the whispers are going to start. People are going to start organizing behind the scenes. And he's going to have a real problem on his hands come January if he even makes it that far.
Okay, so when it comes to Stampede politicians, Danielle Smith's holding court down there. She's enjoying a wave of popularity. She's polling relatively high, stacked up to her fellow premiers in Canada. She's obviously very popular within her own party, and she's using this opportunity to welcome politicians. You probably saw she was hobnobbing with Scott Moe and Doug Ford the other day, the premiers from Saskatchewan and Ontario, and she's got big plans for pipeline expansion and just quite frankly export expansion, production expansion in the province of Alberta. I know you're getting set to write a column on it. If I know anything about columnists, you don't want to give us the main course right now before you publish it at nationalobserver.com. But take us into what you're watching, in what she's saying at the Stampede, who she's talking to, and how this all plays out.
Sure. And I will say, nobody flips a better pancake than Danielle Smith.
She's done it a lot.
Absolute pro. The conversation around, are we going to get another pipeline is I think, going to come to a head pretty soon. Carney has indicated that he thinks it could be one of the major projects in the priority list. Danielle Smith has said over and over again that it has to be, one of the projects on the priority list. But that is not the real issue here. That is not the real constraint. I think, the province can absolutely put some financial guarantees on the table. Maybe the feds do as well, to get one of the pipeline companies to step up and build it for them. The real issue is filling it. The real issue is the oil that goes into the pipeline and the 15 to 20 year commitments that are required for that. The province again can probably put some of its it gets something called bitumen royalties in kind. So it basically takes bitumen instead of royalty cash as a royalty payment. So it can pledge some barrels to a new pipeline, but it does not have enough to fill it. And the private sector is going to look at this and look at the long-term outlook for oil and say, I don't know if I want to commit to that, to 15 to 20 years of increased production, because look, the near term maybe looks okay, but OPEC is clearly deciding to sort of shuffle the deck in terms of its strategy. It will not support prices any longer. It is going back to fighting for market share, which means it's going to drive prices down. You have demand in China possibly peaking this year for oil, if not this year, next year, or 2027. And, once China rolls over, Europe's already rolled over. The United States is probably going to see its demand grow because of everything Trump's doing, but eventually that will roll over as well. We are in a place where oil demand only goes in one direction, and that's down. And that is not a good place for new production of oil sands crude. The existing production, the existing producers, they'll be fine. Their operating costs, their maintenance costs are way more competitive than, say like a new shale project. So they will be much stronger in a declining market than, say, an American company. But as to the Premier's belief that she's going to double oil production by 2050, that is the pipiest of pipe dreams. It is just not even going to come close to happening. And I think it's worth noting how similar her rhetoric and her vision is to the Alberta Prosperity Project, the separatists, who put out their, I guess you could call it a vision, a model budget, where they said they're going to cut income taxes, a puppy in every driveway, a horse in every stable. It was a childish fantasy of what the future would look like. But they also said that Alberta will actually more than double oil production by 2045. This is a staple among conservatives, and especially far-right conservatives in this province, is belief that they can double production in a market where demand is going to start declining. And that is what we should be talking about in Alberta, not, do we want to take social services away from immigrants? But what are we going to do in a world where the one thing we have counted on for as long as any of us have been alive, which is rising demand for oil, is going to change?
In our live chat powered by Park Power, Randy in all caps says, no pipelines with taxpayer money. Meantime, Super Chat Ken says, just wait for the taxpayer subsidies on any oil pipeline proposal. The long tail risk will simply be too high without subsidies, and you've just said as much. It's also an interesting comment here from Erica, who says, well, bitumen can be used to make plastics, though. Says we need a manufacturer that'll use bitumen, and our oil industry would be set. I've heard a lot of people argue that, many different applications. I mean, people talk about carbon capture and some of the spin-off benefits from that as well. You can't, and this is probably a better question for the politicians. I guess I'm just asking you to respond to the idea that if there is consensus, or at least consensus outside Alberta, that global demand for oil is changing, or that there's not going to be an opportunity really realistically to meet that capacity or fill that capacity, or in layperson's terms, to get the money back that it took to build the pipeline in the first place, then why is the government so bullish on it? This has to be more. I don't want to be so cynical to believe that this is all about ringing the bell and banging the drum and getting votes. There has to be an inherent belief that everybody else is wrong about global oil demand over the next 50 years.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the Alberta government is in the same category as OPEC. OPEC thinks that oil demand will just grow and grow and grow. I would just ask people to think about which analysis they want to rely on more. The analysis of experts, of banks, of people with skin in the game, or a cartel that benefits from oil demand going up forever and ever and ever. They are talking their own book when they say that. Banks are not talking their own book. The IEA is not talking its own book. The IEA's whole mission statement, its whole existence, is about stability. It's about ensuring that there are adequate supplies to keep the market supplied. They are not interested in creating a situation where, supply is constrained and then all of a sudden demand runs away. That would be completely antithetical to the IEA. And yet they're the ones who are saying, look, the numbers, the data is clear. Demand is rolling over in China. It's not going to come back. And China was the market that, if you go back to 10 years, even 5 years ago, it was the staple of every bull thesis on oil. So, the Alberta government is free to believe whatever it wants to believe. I just think that is reckless when it comes to preparing this province for the future. I mean, we have all sorts of opportunities. You have the chatter that talked about bitumen beyond combustion. We can use bitumen to build materials. We can use it to build certainly asphalt and other construction materials. There are all sorts of applications that would allow us to actually grow our production of bitumen without having it end up in combustion. And the government of Alberta's work here, and again, it is early stage work, but it suggests that the profit margins on things like carbon fiber from bitumen are higher than the profit margins from simply shipping it in a pipeline. So let's build an economy that is prosperous, that uses more of this bitumen that we have in the ground for the highest value purpose and product. But that's not putting it in a pipeline in a world where combustion-related demand for oil is declining. We have to read the room.
Darren says the numbers are all available and clear. Oil will decline. Nobody's saying it'll disappear. Nobody's saying we'll leave it all in the ground. It's just the price will drop with demand. Boomshanker X says, unfortunately, most markets have been polluted by government subsidies. Ken says it should be worrying that the Americans can't even get a builder to restart Keystone XL. And I want to get this comment on the record, kind of rewinding a little bit. Emily says, and Johnny, you can check out this reel. I'll play it from my laptop here. Emily says, Bonnie Critchley, by the way, the independent candidate in Battle River Crowfoot, taking on Pierre Poilievre in that by-election, says she's leaning on her farming and military background, and that could take her far against a man who's never had a real job. Don't count her out too quickly, Jespo. I just want to be clear. I'm not insulting the candidate. As a matter of fact, I respect the hell out of this candidate for putting her name forward in, quite frankly, hostile territory. But you look at that. What's her tagline? Our home, our riding. That's Bonnie Critchley, independent, who will be appearing here on Real Talk. She's making the trip into town. She's going to join us in studio on our Wednesday episode, right out of the gates at 8:30 Mountain, 10:30 Eastern. Not counting her out, just realistically evaluating the landscape, but she'll have half an hour to talk to Real Talkers and see if she can gain some ground there. Max, we have to ask you about what happened in Edmonton City Council chambers on Friday. I think folks across the country are talking about this just because it's remarkable. You don't ever really hear this stuff. Earmuffs, kids, if there's any kids in the room. Two councillors are going at it, and there's dysfunction. This council's been dysfunctional for almost since inception for many, many different reasons. They're months behind on their initiatives, including the zoning bylaw. A lot of people are looking for resolution on this for obvious reasons. People's financial futures are in flux. People don't know what's going to happen with their properties. People are not quite certain what's happening in their neighborhoods. And so people want council to make take a decisive position is what I'm trying to say on this. Stop laughing at me. That was my flipping pancake moment right there. And anyway, so here's the deal. Councillor Sarah Hamilton doesn't want to kick the ball down the road and delay the decision for like another week. She's got a family vacation planned. A fellow councillor, Joanne Wright, whose voice you will hear first, and the two of them have disagreed with each other, to put it kindly, for quite some time, employs some little passive aggression to remind Councillor Hamilton that things can change. And, well, that's when all hell broke loose.
Oh, I can only speak to it. Okay, so I will be voting in favor. From what I understand from Mr. Pollock from earlier this week, this is a normal course of business with things ramping up, and I would think that maybe the incumbents would have been aware of that. I wasn't, but I've been able to adjust my schedule for the most part. I will have to step away.
Point of order. That was so rude, Mr. Mayor. That was so fucking rude. Fuck you, Joanne Wright. Fuck you.
This is absolutely unacceptable.
All right, and then it goes on from there. That's Amarjeet Sohi, obviously, who jumps in and says that was absolutely unacceptable. I'm getting mixed reviews from people who are asking me about it. Some people think it's absolutely deplorable conduct, and some people absolutely love it. Where do you land on it?
I just like that it started with a point of order, right? It's like, point of order, go fuck yourself. I think I'm going to use that in my day-to-day life from now on.
That needs to be on a T-shirt.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, look, you can clutch your pearls about the salty language. People get frustrated. That was obviously not an appropriate thing to say. But again, she stuck the landing on that. That was a clean clip. She did not miss. So, I think it speaks to the dysfunction on that council. It speaks to the fact that they clearly have issues that they have not properly worked through. Maybe they need to go, have lunch together or something and talk it out. But I don't get upset when people use salty language, because to me, I appreciate the honesty above all of it. Obviously can't use it all the time. We have to use our F-bombs sparingly, but there's a time and a place, and maybe right before a summer vacation when someone's trying to, embarrass you or shame you. Yeah. Stick the landing.
Yeah, I like it. Johnny, sort of like you took the high road yesterday during the show. What did you say? You said you want cooler heads to prevail.
Well, sure,
which
but
I thought was.
But I also said I like these little sparks that come off. I just thought, I think that, I like that she said, I love that we can swear on our podcast. I'm gonna let loose right now. No, but I like that she said fucking rude, because you're like, oh, she's fired up. She's passionate.
Yes.
The two fuck yous in a row was a little too much. Maybe one.
Yeah.
But the double fuck you is kind of like, okay, we're in a professional setting here.
Yeah,
we need to still remember where we are.
Yeah. Fucking as an adjective.
Yeah.
Or a verb for that matter. But no, as an adjective.
Let's get going.
Fucking
Fire
rude.
it up.
But when it's F you, like Ivana's in our live chat right now. Welcome to the live chat. She says, Sarah lives close to me. She's like my neighbor. Does this mean when I see her out and about, I can just go up to her and say the exact same thing? Tell her F you? I mean, I guess you could, but she's all fired up right now. I don't know if that would be smart on your part. Jillian says, I just want to reiterate that I think Sarah is a boss. So there you go. We spent a lot of time on this, well, at least enough time on this yesterday. I just thought I'd put it in front of you and pick your brain on. You don't, like, when's the last time you heard somebody drop 3 F-bombs in chamber anywhere? Like, no, I can't think of, right?
I can't think of the last. No, but you know what? She got her money's worth. You know, if you're gonna drop the first one, in for a penny, in for a pound, I guess.
What a way to go out too, because you're not coming back. So you know what I mean? Just do it. Go all in.
And I think, like, okay, everybody knows, like, Sarah's a friend of the show. I'm a personal friend of Sarah's, but I do not speak for Sarah. This is not what Sarah has told me. This is just my personal opinion. I don't know what her plan is post-politics. I know she's looking forward to a change of pace. She's not running again, obviously. By the way, everybody, tomorrow we'll also be talking to Calgary mayoral candidate Jeff Davison on that show. We're going to talk to all the major contenders in both cities, plus an underdogs Real Talk roundtable, which is coming up, and I'm looking forward to. But she's not running again, and she, I would imagine, has some career plan after, and I kind of wonder if that might actually work in her favor. Like, if she's doing work as a lobbyist or as some sort of a consultant with somebody that's quite sour on this manifestation of council, on this edition of Edmonton City Council, that outburst could actually get her a job.
Yeah, I mean, I maybe she incorporates it into her branding. Yes. I think what's interesting to me is, and it bums me out, but it's just the way the world works, is we get the most authentic version of politicians when they decide they're not running again.
Yes.
When they decide they're not going to run again, then we get the real version. And the real version almost always is more interesting and better. I remember, this is a deep callback, but Paul Martin in 2006 in his concession speech after Stephen Harper won the election. And I was never a fan of Paul Martin's. I always thought he was not my guy, but he gave this speech in his concession speech, and it was the best speech he gave in his life. And I thought, where was this guy for the last 2+ years when he was prime minister? Because this guy would have won majorities. And it's the same thing with so many people. Once they decide they're going to leave office, you see this real person, and you're like, oh, I like that real person. That's who I would vote for. So maybe there's a lesson there.
Okay, I've got to ask you this before you go. Well, thank you for your time. If you're just joining us on the live stream presented by California Closets, Max Fawcett, our guest. I'll acknowledge your colleague Natasha Belowski actually wrote the piece in the National Observer, but I'm sure you're obviously paying attention to this announcement. For our Western Canadian audience in particular, but across the country, people have been wondering, how will this federal government dance with big oil? Or how will this federal government cooperate with the provincial governments in Alberta and Saskatchewan in particular? And I think that the optimists saw the appointment of Tim Hodgson as Energy and Natural Resource Minister as a positive. I don't know if you agree with that or not, but I think people liked it more than some of the predecessors and some of the alternatives. A guy with a long history, a long career in business and commerce, and this $21.5 million carbon capture announcement, your colleague characterizes it, the federal minister, as leaning on oil industry talking points. I haven't seen a Liberal cabinet minister's address parlayed to oil industry talking points in quite some time. How do you wrap your mind around that story, that investment by the feds, and ultimately what should those in particular working in Alberta's oil and gas industry make of it?
I mean, he is from that sector. He was on the board of Mega Energy, so it's not surprising that he uses some of the same language around, the ethicality of our oil and gas production. And look, my objection to that, which goes back to when Ezra Levant created it, was never that we're not ethical in some dimensions, or that we have, good standards in some measures. My objection was, A, the oil and gas industry had very little to do with that, doesn't get to take credit for, our attitude towards same-sex marriage, for example. And they have resisted efforts to make the oil and gas industry more environmentally responsible, more, progressive in terms of taxation, what have you. And so they don't get to take credit for it. And it's not an invitation to take your foot off the gas. It's not an invitation to sit on your hands and pat your back. And so I'm fine with him using a little bit of that language to prime the audience for his real message, which is that there is going to be a grand bargain here. And that's what I've been hearing. It's what I heard at the Stampede parties from a bunch of different people. Carney is pitching a bargain with the oil and gas industry, which is, you guys have to walk these projects across the line. You have to build the carbon capture and storage project that you've been talking about since, most of us were in the womb. And in exchange, we will back off probably on the emissions cap, which is what I suggested in a column a few weeks ago. We'll back off on a couple of things, but we need the province also to step up, Danielle Smith, Scott Moe, and put some money on the table in the form of, and this gets really wonky, but basically them buying into the carbon markets, them buying into contracts for difference, locking themselves into this carbon capture and storage project so they can't walk away from it later. And maybe there's a pipeline included in that bargain, right? I understand why climate advocates hate this because they see it as, more oil production from a higher emitting source. But the whole point of the carbon capture projects is to reduce those emissions, right? That's the game. And if we can get there to a point where the upstream emissions associated with Canada's oil and gas, and especially its oil sands, are, zero or near zero or lower significantly than they are now, that's a win for everyone. This idea that we shouldn't be doing this because most of the emissions happen at combustion. Guess what? If we don't produce this oil, and I know environmentalists hate me hearing me say this, but if we don't produce this oil, we sit on our hands, we take a moral victory, someone else will just produce it. And those combustion emissions will still happen. So the game, to me, has always been, you address the demand side, and the demand side is being addressed globally. We were doing it with the carbon tax, and then the Conservatives vandalized that. But that is the game that environmentalists should be focused on, and we should be decarbonizing our supply. And that's what this grand bargain would seek to achieve. I think it would be very interesting. I think it would give Danielle Smith a lot less room to work with in terms of making the federal government out to be the boogeyman. But we'll see how it all unfolds in the next few weeks.
When can we expect your column out? I want to get people all fired up and subscribing to nationalobserver.com. Next 24 hours or so?
Yeah, let's say 48.
I don't know why I did that to you. I hate when people do that to me. I'm not great with deadlines, Max, which is why we have to set our start time in stone every day, or it would be very flexible.
Yeah, I need the wiggle room just to, you know how it is with deadlines.
Yeah, man. We always enjoy talking to you. Your lovers love you. Your haters love listening to you. And, of course, we look forward to the next time you visit Real Talk. Thanks for doing this, buddy.
Always happy to do it.
All right. That's Max Fawcett, lead columnist at Canada's National Observer. You can check him out, nationalobserver.com. We encourage you to subscribe if it's in your budget and to support courageous, fact-checked, independent journalism. Mm-hmm. We got a ton of comments here online. I want to get to these in just a little bit, but what landed with you there? What resonated with you?
Oh, just the EV talk. I mean, it's crazy to me that people are still like Chicken Littling and saying the sky is falling with this technology. And I mean, even conservatives, I'll just name drop Ben Mulroney, the guy I never agree with, over the weekend, is saying, our future is electrified. It's inevitable. Is it going to happen in 2030, Ryan? I agree with you. I think that mandate is that the success rate of that is probably low. But 2040, 2050, I mean, this is going to happen. And all the things people complain about today about EVs, the range, well, my gas-powered very large engine, 2007 Pontiac Touring.
Very large engine.
No, it has a larger engine than most cars. 500 kilometers about with a full tank. Most EVs are already in the 400 to 500 range with a full charge. Now, you're talking about time for charging. Yes, it does take 25 to 45 minutes to fully charge a car when you pull over at even one of those fast charging stations.
Yeah.
But even a few years ago, that was over an hour, sometimes overnight. Yeah. Where's that going to be in 10 years, 20 years? It's going to be 5 minutes. Not to mention, I'm just watching every day. They're trying to build solar technology into the body of the future cars of EVs and connect them to an alternator. So literally, eventually, while you're driving and the sun is out, you're going to be charging. When you're parked on a street, when you're in a parking lot, when you're outside your house, when you get home for a few hours before the sun sets. So this is inevitable that all these things people are complaining about are going to actually flip on them and be so much more convenient than pulling over and getting gas. You might not even have to plug your car in. You might have to plug your car in once a month if you're just a to and from work kind of person driving.
Yeah.
So like, our future is electrified. It's going to happen. Will oil and gas be around? Probably. We use oil and gas in a ton of other projects. But in terms of combustion engines being taken over by electrified, it's just going to happen.
Yeah, Darren says if you're driving more than 400 kilometers, you're probably going to stop to pee, shop.
That's a
eat.
3-hour drive.
Your car will be
4 hour
charged
drive
by the end of that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I would say this, that I land on this in kind of, I try to land in like a reasonable middle of the road position, which is, and I know families that have exactly this dynamic. The executive producer of this show, Josh, lives in Vancouver with his family. He drives an EV. His wife has a gas job. She has a gas-powered SUV for when their family needs to travel. When they're going to hit the road, they're going to go on vacation, whatever. And then when he's zipping around town and doing his work and doing the grocery runs and all that kind of stuff, they're in the Tesla. So I think that works for a lot of people. Some people, vehicle ownership will never make sense to them. And so then they're going to either use ride sharing or whatever, what have you. And over the next years, I was going to say months, but over the next years, companies like Uber and Lyft and all these companies that, by the way, these self-driving autonomous cars, which are blowing my mind. Everybody that seems that travels to Arizona has a video of them sitting in the back of a self-driving car with no human in the front. Those companies will make a decision based on what? Their bottom line.
Sure.
They'll make a decision based on the affordability, the reliability of those vehicles, how long it takes them to charge. I really believe, and we get emails every time I say something like this, so I'll try to qualify it, but I believe in market factors. I believe in the power of markets. I believe in supply and demand. I think that the market decides a lot of things. Now, someone's going to write in and say, you can't always let capitalist markets decide policy, and you're 100% correct. Environmental measures, that's an important role of government. We recognize we're in a climate crisis. All of the things. I'm with you there. But I don't believe, and I see a lot of pushback here in our live chat of people saying that, I think it was Tommy Temper earlier that said, he goes, I'm not against EVs. EVs are all fine and well. Whether or not he decides to buy one, he says, I just don't want to be forced to buy one. And I think it's interesting to see vehicle manufacturers, some of them very bullish on EVs, and some of them are scaling back their production of EVs and extending their plans on how long they'll continue to produce, these ICE vehicles, these internal combustion vehicles, gas, diesel, and the like.
Sure,
there's always going to be a need, especially in extreme climates, especially in remote job sites. There's always going to be a need for diesel trucks, as an example.
Yeah, but you don't know that.
I do know that.
You don't know technology in 20 years, whether it's going to be better.
20 years, you think that the entire
I
oil
don't
sands will
know.
be running
That's
on
why I
electric?
would never say that.
Yeah.
I'm never going to say that. People say, oh, in the winter and the sun and this. I have no idea. All I know in the last 20 years, EVs have changed everyone's minds.
Yeah.
And I have
some people's minds.
I have no idea where it's going to be in 20 years, but I assume it's going to be incredible.
Yeah.
And why wouldn't it be fine in those climates? I have no idea where the technology is going to be in 20 years.
I just don't think that and you're right. If you would have told somebody 20 years ago today that you would have like all of the music ever composed on planet Earth available at your disposal in your phone, then of course we wouldn't have believed that either. So you're right. Technological advancements can blow our minds, but I'm just saying, like, I'm talking to real people working real jobs, and they're having a difficult time wrapping their mind around relying on battery-powered vehicles, like in the middle of working seismic or working in the oil field or working whatever it is that they're doing. Now, if there is that technological advancement, like as you describe it, the solar thing is really intriguing to me. I can think of a lot of big corporations that wouldn't love to see that, because you've also got to follow the money, right? If vehicles are no longer running on gas or diesel. That's a huge hit to big oil getting involved in sustainable energy projects like solar. Let's also recognize that the electricity that's charging these EVs is coming from natural gas or coal. In most circumstances, maybe hydro. So there's also that angle on it. But if there is quite literally a solar-powered electric vehicle that people can count
with
on and rely on,
you won't need anything.
Then what's the objection? Then these objections disappear.
And I understand what you're saying about these huge vehicles used for work in extreme climates. Yes, but are those the majority of vehicles out there? No, the majority of vehicles on the road out there in the world, in every country, everywhere, just like say China, are people just getting to and from 25-minute drives, 30-minute drives to and from work. The majority of those vehicles in 10, 20 years are all going to be electric because it's going to be easier, it's going to be faster, it's going to be more convenient. And when people say, like 5 years ago it was EVs are too expensive. And now we go online and they're pretty much the same price. Now the argument is, well, they cost too much to fix. But you don't have to fix them as often. They don't require oil changes. They have few lubricants. They don't have combustion inside them.
No transmission.
So in 5, 10, all I'm thinking is, when people keep saying, no, it's not going to be till 2050, I say, hey, maybe you are right. But man, your tune is going to change when we hit 2050 and in our lifetime. Those EVs, like I'm saying, if they can create solar technology in the body of a car with an alternator, I just don't see a reason for me to ever even consider using a gas-powered vehicle for any. And what about China? Vancouver, Toronto, they're already doing this, like the ride sharing, where you can literally swipe your credit card. It's like an Uber on the street, right?
Yeah.
You go find it, you get in, you take it to and from wherever, then you leave it. Yeah, and another person, they have them in Edmonton too, picks them up. Imagine when those are EVs. I mean, do you even need to buy a car? If there's a parking lot of these things near your house, like
I think it all depends on. I mean, like, to state the obvious, it depends on where you live and what you do, right? Like there, Blasheep's in here says we know batteries. Says batteries are much worse in colder climates. No chance in minus 40. Everybody's going to use EVs up north. Others of you are saying, like in 20 years, most everything is going to be electric. I like this from Corradetti Motorsports. Great to have you tuning in. Says EVs have become a political statement, which has hampered their adoption rate here in North America. It was interesting to see like Tesla's stock price fluctuate as Elon was participating in his shenanigans with Donald Trump, right? Like when Trump was sitting, I think it was the Model S, like that nice Tesla sedan, when Trump was pimping that in front of the White House. But the stock surged. The stock surged.
Can I say something?
And then it plummeted.
How weird
as soon as it all broke apart.
How weird to see Trump in a car. Doesn't he look so out of place? Like he's never driven a car. He's been driven everywhere.
I wonder I'd be curious to know what he does like on his own.
Have you ever seen him a picture in a car? Like a guy who has that much money, like most guys, they have a fleet of cars, right? They've got they got the Benz, they got the Porsche, they've got the, and you never see him driving anything. So it was super awkward to see him trying to push that. I'm like, do you even know where the gas and the brake is in a car? Like, do you have any idea how to turn it on?
Ken K says, Jespo, in 20 years, you are going to be loving your electric Jeep. I will say this. Number one, you guys know I love Jeeps. Have a Jeep. I built a Jeep with my brother. He's got a Jeep. We all take our Jeeps out. Everybody a Jeep. May Long Weekend is our big Jeep jamboree. And there are electric Jeeps. There's it's the Jeep Wrangler 4xe, and it's super cool. I would say this as well: the type of wheeling, like people, and always off-road responsibly, everybody, and stay out of riparian and other sensitive ecological areas. And I say that sincerely. But if you're burying your Jeep in mud up to the top of the headlights. I don't want to have an $85,000 electric motor underwater. Like if you're
why?
Why?
I don't understand this.
Why?
What technology did they come up with the combustion engine to make it be able to do that?
Well,
why wouldn't they do it with electric motors?
You're not going to see.
People
like, I'm just
think
saying,
it's so
our
delicate.
Our Jeeps are, well, they are delicate. Our Jeeps,
but in 20 years.
Built, yeah, man. Like, well, it just even take the price point. Like, if you have an Escalade or if you have a Mercedes-Benz GLS, or you've got a Range Rover, like you're not actually using that for off-roading unless you're insane or unless money's no object. So I'm just saying the electric Jeep is super cool, but people that are actually out there wheeling those things, doing serious off-roading, they're going to destroy them. Like we drive early 90s Jeeps because when you open the hood, it looks like how motors looked in the 60s.
Okay. I'm just all these things you're talking. I've never been mud bogging in my life, and I probably never.
You got to
will.
come with
so
us.
that I think the majority of people
would
are like
love
that.
it.
What I'm saying is, in 20 years, like in China, it's like 40% of sales right now are EVs. In Norway, somebody just commented, I think it's over 90% right now. So in 20 years, like I don't want to argue about it and talk about extreme weather and huge diesel engines and mud bogging. Like I'm talking about the majority of cars on the road in 20 years. Let's just be honest. It's inevitable. They are going to be very affordable, electric powered, fast charging, perhaps even solar charging vehicles.
Yeah. We
yeah,
hope.
yeah.
And if they are, and if you're right, which I hope is the case, then obviously more people will buy them. But it's just the objections that people have to buying them now are legitimate objections, right? You don't have the range, or they cost too much, or it really just doesn't suit your purpose.
Cliff says Johnny has drawn his line in the cement and won't move. Good
That's
for
okay.
content.
That's
Well, I
great.
like this because we have two sides here, right?
There's millions of
you are
sides.
of the side of, and I will admit this, of most people right now. They can't imagine this future, right? But what I do is like, not to say that you're not a dreamer, but I look every day. I'm like, man, how are they going to make this? Because I want it to happen for me now, and I still drive
Yes.
a combustion engine because I know it's not convenient. I'm a guy who drives 20 clicks to work, 20 clicks home, maybe 10 in between there, running errands most days, Monday to Friday. I don't need a gas-powered engine, but at the same time, for me to switch to EV right now, I got to wonder, where am I going to charge? How many times a week am I going to charge? Is that going to cost me money, et cetera? And these are the things people are thinking about.
Darren says EVs in the winter will blow your minds. You get basically instant heat, and they start with no issue. Ms. KD says, I think that electric Jeep is pretty sexy. It's very sexy. It's 100% sexy. But also, when did Jeeps become like 85 grand? Cheryl outside says our putt-putt EV gets less distance in winter for sure. You think carefully about where you need to go before you turn on the seat warmers. Says, but it's just a commuter vehicle, so it's not a problem. Noob, try again in the live chat. What's up, Noob? Says, someday I'm sure that we will have an EV or a hybrid, and I think that that's almost a different conversation, Noob, right? Like a hybrid makes sense for anybody. How does hybrid not make sense, right? It goes electric when it can, and if not, you rely on the gas motor. He says, but for now, all our vehicles are paid off, so there's no rush. I'm still going to keep my full combustion summer car, says
I just think the tech is good. Like 10 years ago, 15, 20 years ago, sorry, could you imagine like your car turning off when you stopped at a stop sign or a red light and then turning back on again? Like this technology, it comes around so fast. And like, year by year, month by month, even day by day, I look at EVs every day and I'm like, wow, look what they're working on in Europe or in China. They're trying to make, put this solar stuff into the body of the car. And I know we're years away from that, but in my mind, I just don't see, there just won't be a need. Like Max said, there won't be a need as much as we are now today for oil and gas. But I do realize I realize it's on my wrist right now in this watch. It's in my phone right now here in my hand that I'm holding. I realize it's in my laptop. I realize there's petroleum in things. I just feel like this is such an inevitable thing. It's like the people who are like, who were against the internet when it came out. Like this is gonna change.
Who is against the internet?
You know what I mean? This is gonna change everyone's life for the better. And the people in the chat right now and who I see online commenting saying, here's the problem, I don't want to be forced, here's the problem. Well, what happens when the day comes and all those problems you're talking about have flipped and they're actually good for you? They're actually making your life easier.
I think
there'll be nothing left to argue about.
Yeah, I think, well, and if you get to that point, well, we'll always find something to argue about.
I know the one thing we'll argue about with cars is this. I fucking hate.
Jeez, Johnny.
I'm Sarah Hamilton here. kids driving by or older people, I don't know who they are, and revving their engine when I'm trying to sleep at night. And EVs takes that away. And I know you're going to hate that. You're always going to want that. You want to get that classic car, that Cadillac you got. You want to rev up the engine, right?
No, I'm going to go aftermarket. And so my silent EV is still going to
You're going to put like a noise.
The turbo blow off. I want to throw a couple of things into the mix. Number one, Corradetti Motorsports follows up here. Check this out. Share the screen. This is from a YouTube channel called Tesla Clips. This is a Tesla Model S. Keep it on here. This is like a minute and a half. Look at this, going completely submerged. Corradetti Motorsports says you can hydrolock a gas engine easily, which is true. My sister hydrolocked her 4Runner in Racehorse Creek a few years ago. Says the EV is actually much. Look at this. Is actually much
this an EV?
better. This is a
Wow.
This is a Tesla Model S.
Shit.
Says the EV is much better in the extreme conditions. He says you can look up the Cybertruck submarine feature. Well, this is a Model S. This is a sedan. Now, there is some water coming in the doors. I mean, that's going to happen. Obviously, should we say this? Don't try this at home.
Don't drive underwater.
Don't drive underwater, everybody. But look at this. I'll be honest. This is surprising, especially a Tesla Model S. My understanding is I think that the Model S goes for well over 100,000 Canadian, I think. So to even be driving this underwater is potentially a financial adventure. But look at that. So there you go. Apparently, the Cybertruck has a submarine feature. I'm just saying, what do Cybertrucks go for? What are Cybertrucks? Like 100 and some grand? I don't know. I don't know anybody personally that owns one. I'm just saying, like, I'm not wheeling a $100,000 vehicle. That's the only point I'm making. So I understand when some people are saying, like my Jeep's from 1992. We have a classic car, 1965. Like, I want to have those, or my son wants to drive those into his adult years, mostly because I've been indoctrinating him and brainwashing him about how cool they are. But there are going to be people that are always going to want to have gas vehicles. And so I think that it gets touchy and sensitive when a lot of what you're talking about, you're saying the technology will be this, and they're working on this, and we're going to get to this. And it's not like it's here. You can buy it. Here's how it works. It's like, here's what we're working on. Here's what the future could look like. And at the same time, we're phasing out gas vehicles in 4 years or in 10 years.
But I'm not
I think that's where people get a little bit touchy.
I'm not just watching videos of people speculating. I'm watching the stuff they're working on right now, what they're prospecting for the future in the next 3 years, 5 years. And then, when you talk about 10, 20 years, obviously that's a little out of scope. But, I mean, the things they're already working on, I'm like, man, these are the same things they were talking about 5, 10 years ago, and that all came to fruition. So I assume that they're going to continue with that innovation and research and be funded. I mean, all these things you're talking about, all these companies, I mean, Mercedes, our newest and greatest sponsor, I mean, go to their website. They've got incredible electric vehicles.
They're beautiful.
Luxury vehicles. And then you can also go to GM and look at theirs, and they're affordable. So I just don't see in 5, 10 years that it won't be more affordable and more convenient. So
Lauren says the 65 will be Wyatt's grad car. Yeah, I think you're right, Lauren. Hey, John, are you ready? You know what's always going to require gas? A beautiful grill. A beautiful new grill from You Need a Barbecue in Sherwood Park. Yeah, that's right. And I'm mostly kidding because, of course, as you know, you can fire these things up with briquettes. You can get your smokers if wood pellets are your thing. Maybe a nice little apple wood smoke. If you go propane, natural gas, whatever it is, You Need a Barbecue has you covered. I encourage you to come visit them in Sherwood Park. It's worth the drive out. If you live out there, make sure you pop in and say hello. This is where I first took barbecue lessons. They have these barbecue classes. Took them like 5 years ago. Blew my mind. Learned how to just nail a brisket. Russell and Brian and the team out there, absolutely amazing, and they'll give you the best advice, plus white glove concierge service, right? They'll put the barbecue together for you. They'll drop it off of your house if that's what you're looking for. Plus, wait, there's more. They have Unitas barbecue sauce in a partnership with K-Days. If you pop into You Need a Barbecue and pick up a bottle of Unitas barbecue seasoning, you're going to get 2 free tickets to K-Days. How good is that? Wow. It's the best deal of the summer.
And throw a pineapple on it.
At youneedabarbecue.com. I loved that yesterday. Pineapple pork grilling recipes. How great was that? We also want to give a shout out to our friends at Friesen Brothers. You get that grill, now you got to find something to put on it. Nobody does a better job when it comes to celebrating and highlighting Alberta proteins than the real butchers at Friesen Brothers, whether it's pork, beef, chicken, maybe even bison that you're looking for, maybe the Ivan sausages or Friesen Brothers in-house smoked thick cut bacon. They've got you covered. Ran into a Real Talk audience member yesterday out in the wild. Ran into her. I told her I'd give her a shout. So this is your shout out, Dana. I saw Dana on the patio. Dana says, Jespo, I got to tell you something. Our entire grocery routine has changed since you partnered with Friesen Brothers. I said, Dana, what is the one item you want me to highlight when I drop your name on Real Talk? She said, well, the sourdough cinnamon buns, obviously. So Dana, Mike, and this is your shout out. And a shout out to the Friesen Brothers sourdough cinnamon buns. 16 Alberta communities, still family owned after 70 years. You can check them out online at friesen.com. A shout out to our friends at the California Closets of Canada. This family-owned business, proudly operating out of Alberta, and that includes all of the installations that are manufactured. That's right, it all happens in our home province of Alberta. They do custom closets, systems, solutions for the entire home, including your garage. If you've been spending like the last few weeks trying to find your rollerblades, you still don't know where your summer tires are rolling on the winters because it's just a mess in there, the team at California Closets can help you out. Custom designed to fit your space and budget and guaranteed for life. There's no small print on that. You can learn more about how they work and request a free consultation with their design team. Just check out their website, californiaclosets.ca. Proudly Canadian-owned and operated. And I wanted to save this just to let you all know I had a chance to meet with the leadership team at UCAN Youth Services yesterday, grabbed a bite, spent some time talking about a bold new vision. They're about to roll out a capital campaign this summer that Real Talk will be proud to support. We're going to take you inside, John, the brand new building they have just secured. Yeah, that's right. The team at UCAN Youth Services has just secured a new beautiful heritage building downtown Edmonton. We're going to tell you more about it in the weeks and months to come. This is going to allow them to double their service offerings. That's right. The number of young people aged 12 to 24 that are benefiting from UCAN's programs, including the Relentless program in partnership with the Edmonton Police and their Verto program, which is a work placement program. Incredible results there. They're going to be doubling their impact with this new building, this new facility. Now, to do that, they're going to need our help. And we're going to be talking to you in the weeks and months to come about a bold fundraising vision that they have. We're affixing our name to this. We're proud to be part of it because we believe in the life-changing work that they do. You can learn more about what they're doing today by checking out ucan.ca. I want to give a shout out in our super chat to RH, a $10 contribution. Thank you very much. And look at that, Ms. KD right after on their heels with another 10. You guys, so kind. RH says, drop the ridiculous tariff on Chinese EVs. I think that's got to happen at some point, right? China holds a ton of economic power. How long can that last? RH says, drop the ridiculous tariff on Chinese EVs. Invest in electrical infrastructure. Electrification is the future. Backward culture, politics, and entrenched interests are the problems. I think that's an intuitive comment from RH. And Ms. KD wonders what kind of is NA? What's that? North America? Oh, non-alcoholic. What NA? What kind of NA beer is in your fridge? We currently have two types right now. One of them is the what's the Arcadia one called? I'm going to look at Arcadia.
I can't
Brewing
remember,
Company.
but we also have Heineken Zero.
Yeah, that's right, Heineken Zero. The Arcadia Brewing one is called like a. You know what I'm exposing myself for right now is like not drinking their non-alcoholic beer. So there you go. But it's called like a Happy Morning or something like that. And this is one actually that the owner of the brewery has done as he's made his way off of the sauce. So make sure you check out Arcadia. They got a great, he's going to kill me for not remembering what it's called. But yeah, they have a great non-alcoholic beer as well. There's a lot of I've noticed a lot more independent and craft brewers are doing either the low alc or the non-alcoholic beer, whether that's, I think we've always called it like the 0.5 or whatever. Mm-hmm. But I just as Miss Katie, and I don't know what prompted her question, asking but we do have the two types in our fridge. I think that there's a real increased demand for that. People still want the cold, crisp beer in the summer or whatever. But I think a lot more people, especially young people, are moving away from alcohol like in droves.
Every time I'm out now, there's 1 or 2 people in a group, and they all are drinking, I don't want to say brand names, but the Corona Lights, they call them, or whatever, which are low alcohol, or there's another one, I think it's called the Sunshine or whatever, where it's 0. Or the Heineken Zeros, or they're asking about mocktails instead of cocktails. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, Arcadia Brewing Company's non-alc beer is called Tomorrow's Happiness.
That's because you wake up feeling okay.
That's right.
And so you're drinking this, you're like, I'm going to be so happy when I get up. I'm not even going to need to drink water before bed and in the morning. I'm just going to get right up, go right out for a run.
Yeah.
Ryan and Johnny will be sleeping in a pile of fries or whatever they ate before they passed out. Just kidding.
That's not true. There's no element of truth.
Only on Sundays.
Yeah, exactly. Ken K says he's got Heineken Zero in his beer fridge. That's what we have in ours as well.
Yeah.
Have you tried it? Is it any good?
Yeah, I think if you're not a big drinker and you did a blind taste test, you'd be pretty. If you're not someone who's a connoisseur who's been drinking their whole life, like if you're 18 to 25 and you don't drink a lot, I think we could put someone to a blind taste test with some of these non-alcoholics, and it'd be hard to tell.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what we'll do is as soon as we sign off on this episode, we want to thank you all for joining us.
We're going to try so many beers.
But we're going to have like for a legitimate sample size, you're going to have alcoholic and non-alcoholic beers in the mix. So we're going to have to probably
at least 6 brands.
6 or 8 of them.
Maybe
each.
10 to 12.
Maybe we could do like a private video for our Real Talk community chat on Discord, and we
might take tomorrow off.
Well, we'll see what happens. No, we can't. We got a big show tomorrow. Big show tomorrow. Huge show tomorrow. RH, I see your contribution again in the super chat. Goes on to say, I'd much rather see. This is an interesting one. This will kind of take us into the next episode. RH says, and if you missed it, had a fantastic conversation with economist Todd Hirsch yesterday. That guy can take like high-level stuff and just make it understandable for the average person.
Love that.
I really
That's
appreciate
what I need.
the work that Todd does. Former chief economist at ATB, like back in the day. Now he's an author and public speaker. You can check out that episode. I encourage you to do so. We talked about Canada's 5% of GDP contribution or the commitment to NATO and what it's going to take to get there. It's $50 billion more per year. And Todd lays out exactly how you get there. You're not going to like it, most likely. It means more taxes, less spending, tough decisions. RH says, I'd much rather see 5% GDP spent on building electrical infrastructure and invested in EV production capacity, including R&D, than on a ridiculous NATO alliance that doesn't protect Canada. I would argue that the NATO alliance does protect Canada. And I think that it's an important contribution. I don't know 5%, but certainly 2%, the bare minimum, the commitment Canada agreed to years ago, because of the importance of the economic relationship with the United States and the fact that this American president has dug his heels onto that big time. Yeah. So I do think that Trump's given us marching orders on that, but I will take your point, and I love the idea of investing further in electrical infrastructure. You talk to anybody that actually works in utilities, and they'll tell you, and I'm not trying to be Chicken Little, and I'm not trying to be ridiculous, and I'm not trying to be the contrarian, but if everybody, and this isn't going to happen, but if everybody went to EVs right now, we would not have the infrastructure capacity for everybody to charge.
That's the other reason I do agree with you. I think this mandate, honestly, I think it's silly. I don't think 2030, all our cars are EVs. That's ridiculous. Why are you putting these handcuffs on our auto industry so soon? 2030 is right around the corner. 2040, maybe. 2050 seems much more reasonable if we were going to do something like that. And great show today. I just think a lot of talk about the future, Ryan. I can't wait till I'm driving around in my... Actually, I won't be driving. My self-driving EV.
Like to be driven around.
Drinking a non-alcoholic beer with my temple implant of my phone, reading text messages on my eye.
Yeah, I kind of like... I want to meet you halfway there. I don't ever want anything implanted. Unless I need it to save my life, that's fine. Pacemaker, something like that. But maybe I'll eat my words and change my tune 10 years down the road. But I sure do love the idea of being driven around. The autonomous vehicles would probably take a bit of getting used to. Every single person I've talked to, and I've only seen them in the state of Arizona. I'm sure that they're elsewhere. But like personal friends have traveled and posted Instagram stories and reels sitting in the back of this autonomous driving car. And I've learned a little bit about them. Like I was like, can you like hijack them? Can you take the car yourself? Can you? And the guy, Scott, my buddy who was in one, he goes, no, man. He goes like the whole thing is monitored to the point where there was a group of guys heading out golfing down in Scottsdale. They get into one of these autonomous cars, and the car would not leave. The one guy didn't have a seatbelt on. It senses there's no seatbelt on, and then a human voice, but not like a, you need to put your seat. It was like an actual guy, like a voice comes on. It's like, hey, guys, you got to buckle up before we can take off. So they're all monitored.
I mean, this was a concern. Remember 2002, Tom Cruise Minority Report?
Yeah.
Where all the vehicles were autonomous, but then they can also be controlled. Like literally, the doors lock and they're taking him to the police station. He has no control over it. So there are a lot of things about autonomous that is really scary still. And so I'm not all into that just yet. But the future looks more convenient is all I'm saying. And if it makes money and creates industries and creates jobs, and we can all avoid being sucked up by AI somehow by being, sucked into that instead. I mean, I'm sure there's going to be a need for people to still service cars and,
for sure,
and do all these things.
Of course. Right? So, Emily says, Jespo, they're also in California. I shouldn't be surprised, obviously. Yeah. And I love this from M. Aitken. I don't know where you live, but I wish you could come by and hang out. She says, oh, no, hubby is revving his Harley. The dogs are going crazy. Nothing like the sound of a Harley.
I don't mind it. In the afternoon on a hot day while I'm drinking a Heineken Zero or one from our friends at Arcadia, it's fine. It's at 1 a.m., 2 a.m. when I got to get up at 6:30 and be here that I'm like, shut.
Fair enough. Jillian says we now have almost everything that was in that Minority Report movie. You're not wrong. I got to go back and rewatch that.
Do I sound old?
By the way, Jillian, I mean, old compared to who?
Turn down that Harley, you goddamn whippersnapper.
You're also a professional DJ featured in the newest Edify magazine with sunglasses inside and gold chains. So I would say you're doing just fine.
And in a week, I'll be 65.
Jillian, by the way, hope you heard your email read on the most recent episode. You can check that out as well. We're always looking to hear from you, Real Talkers. Today's episode, into overtime. We're just having so much fun. Coming up on our next episode, Bonnie Critchley joins us in studio. She's the independent candidate hoping to beat Pierre Poilievre in that by-election in Battle River Crowfoot. We'll find out what her game plan is and what's driving her candidacy. Plus, Jeff Davison, former Calgary councillor, lost to Gondek and Farkas before in a mayoral race. He's back. He says he can do it this time. We'll find out how. We'll talk to you soon.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jespersen, executive producer Josh Dunford, technical producer John Hicks, general manager Katie Cook-Chivers, account coordinator Lawrence Derlego, human resources Lena Shepard, website design Mike Johnston, voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton. Real Talk's editorial board is Supriya Dwivedi, Ahmed Ali, Brandy Morin, Ann Castleman, Corey Hogan, Harmon Candola, Catherine O'Neill, and Chris Henderson. Member Emerita, Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is a relay project. For more, check out ryanjespersen.com.